All right, well, welcome everybody to the CED video workshop this year. Guess we'll get started, huh? I guess I wanted to start last year. We lost John Stevens, so I just kind of wanted to do a little tribute to him to start off with. Most collectors of CED have heard the name John Stevens. John worked for RCA in the video disc program and then provided support for players and stylists to anyone who needed it through CE Datum. He hosted the workshop where anyone could come and learn how to maintain players. He was there to provide support for parts. We learned many things from John. Today we carry on his legacy with the workshop. That's a picture of me.
You got mail.
So I got some mail.
This was the first workshop I went to with John.
What year was that, Josh?
I thought it was 2016, but they were saying it was earlier than that.
Was that the one in the
14 maybe?
church?
Yeah, this was at the church. I never heard from Howard today whether or not he could make
Yeah, I
it.
was surprised I haven't seen him.
Yeah.
He's,
Yeah, he's usually here.
Or Ron either.
John Fralick, isn't it?
That's the first one, wasn't it?
And this would have been the first one at the hotel here. Can everybody see it okay? Yeah. So yeah, okay, so this one was 2016, so the one at the church must have been 2014 then. Because I think we didn't do one the year after that. This was from a video that I had made of him showing how to box up a player that I was going to put on YouTube and I never got around to it. We don't have to watch the whole thing. So that was 2018.
That was my first one. That's 19 there. That's Derek Dresser. I see he
Yeah,
wasn't.
this will be the next one. Derek. And this was last year.
That's 2021.
Gene. And then on the Memories of Video Disc, Jay Bradner said it was indeed a privilege to have met, worked with, and associated with such high caliber people. And I think we all know why. So, we'll get started here. We're going to learn what CED is and how it works. We're going to learn the history of RCA and video disc program, how to repair and maintain the players, tools needed for the toolkits, and then if you have any questions, and then after that we'll do a hands-on seminar and get some players repaired. Alright, so they began development of the video disc back in the early 1960s. They found that through capacitance they could transform a grooved disc into a picture. Capacitance is an electronic signal that passes through the disc to collect information off the surface. They achieved this using a PVC disc loaded with carbon to make the disc conductive so that they could pass the electric signal through the disc. They created a series of pits and valleys, like up and down on the disc, to send the electronic signal passing through the disc, and then they would compare that signal to a starting signal, and that way they would know how high or low the pit was. So the stylus moves to translate that information to data, like Morse code, ones and zeros on a computer. And then they compiled that data into a picture on the screen. The disc itself is made of PVC, polyvinyl chloride, mixed with 15% Ketgen EC carbon black. This is just a picture from the tape that I had that kind of shows what the different particles were. is like a stabilizer and then some kind of liquid that they mixed with it. The disc is 12 inches in diameter. It uses a spiral groove of V-shaped cross sections with a width of 2.66 microns. So there's 9,541 grooves in an inch. So in comparison here with the CED versus a regular audio record, the spiral groove's 13 miles long. It holds an hour of data per side, which is 175 times more data than an audio record. The audio record's read at 33 1/3 RPMs and holds 22 sides, 22 minutes of audio per side, while a video disc is read at 450 revolutions per minute, contains an hour of audio and video per side. So there's about 40 CED grooves per one audio groove. So you can see on the top picture they have the audio grooves, and then on the bottom is the CED grooves. Much smaller. Alright, so the information is detected by a stylus that rides in the groove. Detects the relief pattern by sensing the changes in capacitance from the tip of the electrode stylus and the surface of the conductive vinyl. So there's this metal tip that actually rides on the diamond. The diamond just keeps it tracked in the groove, and then the capacitance goes up through the disc, through that metal tip, and then it gets read by the computer parts. Alright, so they used film from a 35mm or magnetic tape. The video, chroma, and audio signals were transformed to a cutting head of an electromechanical recorder. The diamond cutting stylus cut a V-shaped groove 2.5 microns wide into a heavy aluminum disc, 1/4 inches in diameter and coated thinly with copper. Okay, so the disc is aluminum and coated with copper. Feels like kind of heavy for aluminum, doesn't it?
Solid aluminum.
Yeah. 14 inch in diameter, coated thinly with copper. So that would be a copper master. Should I grab a copper master real quick? or-
Yeah.
I'll do that for
Yeah,
you.
grab it.
Talk.
Probably the only
Where's
one.
it doing?
So this picture is the cutting lathe that they used. You can see the copper master on there. And then they would have played the 35mm or the tape. And then it would have recorded, cut the groove into the disc. So then once they got that copper master made, they coated it with a thin layer of nickel, and then that was built up by electroplating, and then they would peel that off and use that as a negative called a metal master. So yesterday at Gunther John's place, he actually had a copper master. So this could possibly be the last one that's still around. But it looks like this, and then that machine there that you saw.
Fill it up just a little bit more.
So this is the copper master that would have been sitting in that thing right there.
There, I just took a photo.
Pass it around.
You break it, you buy it.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
I'll replace it.
Yeah, you can pass it around, but don't touch the surface of it because it'll leave fingerprints and stuff on it.
Is it true if we're
We don't
dropping
know
a
how to
bucket, we
clean
get
it
to
and
buy
stuff.
it?
For his determined price.
$1 million.
You mean-
Yeah, it had a couple when we got it already. If you want to.
Be careful, Davey.
Alright, so they coated it with nickel, and then they would remove that nickel layer, and that was a metal master. Somebody brought a metal master last year, I think.
That was Eric.
Here.
Bring it this way.
And then they used that metal master to stamp the disc.
Well, it's calibrated,
So,
it's calibrated for your capacity.
It's not aluminum, I can tell you that right now. It's heavy steel, not never lit.
right.
Right.
Well, so that's that you then probably see.
Alright, the process is then repeated to form a number of positive copies called molds or mothers. Each mold can then be replicated to produce a number of negative replicas called stampers, which express the disc. So this picture here is a puck is when stampers for both halves of the disc are made, they are centered in a compression molding press or a carbon-loaded PVC placed between the stampers that are heated to 385 degrees, and then they press them together for 30 to 36 seconds. And then the excess is trimmed away, and the disc is placed in a spindle, which Mike has one. Where was I at here? In a spindle, and then moved on to the next process.
This would be the spindle, and then they stack them.
And that's the spindle that goes on.
And they got a little separator in there, so they supposed they can separate so many by so many by so many until they pack.
Well,
This is aluminum, feels like aluminum.
Okay, so then once the discs are pressed, they move on to be lubricated. Normal audio disc uses about 1 gram of tracking force, while CED uses about 65 kilograms. So it was found that a lubricant was necessary to prevent contact between the stylus and the disc surface to provide a non-destructive mechanism. So basically they found a product called General Electric Silicone Division SF1147 that they would spray onto the disc to coat the disc so that the stylus wouldn't actually touch the disc. It just kind of floats on the surface. That way it doesn't scratch the disc, and then prevents wear to the diamond as well. And then this is the machine spraying the silicone on the disc. I just posted a couple pictures on the Facebook group too of that, the outside of that machine. It's a really big machine, it took up the whole room. But this is it being applied. They would dilute the mixture with isopropyl heptane and to spray it onto a thickness of 200 to 250 angstroms. So yeah, so it would have been like a waxy compound that they mixed with alcohol, and they sprayed it on the disc, and then the alcohol would evaporate, leaving the silicone bonded to the disc. And that's why you should never clean a CED. The outer layer of your skin contains microscopic pores that secrete sweat and oils. Your sweat is mostly water, but also contains a small fraction of salt, amino acids, proteins. These chemicals remain on the skin after the water evaporates. So basically when you touch a disc, it'll leave a fingerprint, and then that fingerprint has salt and acids and stuff that eat away at that silicone layer, and then that's why you get skipping. You have a disc with fingerprints on it. But then that's also why you don't want to clean a disc with anything other than just distilled water, because otherwise it'll wash away that silicone coating.
You came up with a theory last night when we were eating the delicious pork tenderloin sandwiches that will change your life. We wondered, and since we had everybody here, does everybody know what like a Okinoki record machine is? That like it's a record cleaning thing, and it's like a vacuum. And what else was it?
It's basically a box, and it's got a tray on it the size of a record, and then it's got, I don't know, some kind of a rod that's about the size of the thin hole in a record, and then you basically put your record on top of it, and then you tighten, there's like a metal tie, so it tightens it down on the platter, and then you hook up this tiny little vacuum tube that's like L-shaped, and then it also has a vinyl brush on it, okay? So it's blowing air, and it's hitting it lightly with a vinyl brush, which is made to touch, you know, vinyl records and stuff, and it just goes around and blasts it lightly with the vacuum and gets all, you know, so it sucks up all the whatever, if there's a little bit of paper or glue, matter, whatever, fibers, or it gets all that stuff.
And it's perfectly clean.
I think it would be, it works for records really well, but we're thinking it might work really well for
Yep.
CEDs.
And you don't use the solution, you would
Yeah.
just use distilled water.
Yeah, because on this, they also say, oh, you want, there's like 2 different kinds of solutions they use, but obviously we wouldn't use any solution, maybe some distilled water.
And we're guessing, we didn't know at the time, but the spindle hole in the middle of it, I'm almost betting it's the same as a 45 record.
I was just gonna ask that question.
That's my best guess. I didn't test it, but it looks like it would be for a 45 record.
Yep.
So if you put the spacer in there, put it on there, tighten the holder, get it down, sprayed it with distilled water, ran the thing, that would take any contaminants basically off the surface, and it would be perfectly clean.
But you haven't tried it.
No, just theory.
But if you were to try it and it destroyed, didn't know that it destroyed the disc, would it destroy the machine?
No,
No?
no, there's nothing physical with the machine, just vacuum.
Well, no, I meant the player machine.
No, if you just use a scrap disc. just
Like
to
on
test
Golden
it.
Pond.
Yep,
Yeah.
unless you love on Golden Pond, which I'm
Ordinary
sure
people.
someone does.
On Golden Pond,
We have one, so I could try.
You know what I'm talking about. don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think, would that work?
The only thing though is that you said that there's air that presses into it. That's not the way ours works. Ours is a box, and you put the album down.
No, actually, it's like a vacuum.
Yeah,
Right.
it
sucks.
sucks it
It's a
out.
tube about
into
this
it.
big.
Is that like, is it an Okinoki one, or is it similar?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The only thing though is that what touches the record is there's just two pieces. I think it's just felt is what they have. There's a little slit in the arm, and with albums, you put their solution on. They give you a brush, and then as it turns, you're supposed to hold the brush on, and then you just hit the vacuum, and then as the record goes around, that slit actually sucks up all of the solution. So in theory, it could work.
So I've used the, how they have those anti-static brushes. They're not like, what is it, Hunt brush is the one that's really, really good. This is just like the ones, they're higher end ones, but they're anti-static. And I've used those on discs, just like barely touching them, and it takes everything off.
Do you have
Because
these
I get the
machines
little
here?
white particles on them all over the glue
No,
and
they
stuff.
cost
The only
about
part that would,
$400
I mean, the felt though, hitting the
They're like 300,
hitting
400
this, that's the only part that I
Well,
can think that I'd be a little.
thousands of
Yeah.
records,
I don't
it'd be
know.
worth it just to
See,
get,
I think
Yeah.
that would work.
becoming
I don't know,
possible.
we just were goofing with it last night, and the idea.
We could try it.
of
I mean, we have one of the cleaners.
We were
I don't
watching this guy demo it with on a YouTube channel, and I mean, it looked pretty cool. It'd be cool to get one. They're spendy though. They're like anywhere from, you could probably get
Yeah.
it. You
I would
might be
think
able to
you
find
could
one
buy
from
used.
250 to 400 bucks.
Ours was, it was a lot, but they're loud though.
expensive.
You'd have to have it
Are they
dedicated to,
loud?
Oh my gosh, they're loud.
you'd have to
Really?
have it probably
It's like-
dedicated to the movie disc, because otherwise if
Basically
you use
just
it for
like a
records too, the
residential
solution might
record.
still
Yeah.
stay at the first one.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Anyways,
Do you wash the brushes in them?
No, usually the liquid gets absorbed, and some of the liquid gets absorbed into the brush, and then we just don't really care about
It's
it.
Right.
it's the same rated vacuum pump as like vacuum cleaners.
Yeah, like,
It's
your
pretty-
average
it's pretty
residential
robust, but,
vacuum.
Yeah, we could try it on
I don't know, it's just a thought on it.
We could try.
And another one, I was thinking, they have those spin doctor ones, where you just put it in there, and then they're like in the bath.
Oh,
And I don't know if those felt pads would be too rough. They're felt, they're real fine felt. If you put it in there with just distilled water and did it that way. I haven't tried mine yet, 'cause I have one of those, but it might be something to think about. It would get the disc cleaner. Because we all have problems with dirty discs
I
and.
was talking to Pam
Fingerprint.
yesterday, back in 40 years ago, 41, when you bought a new disc, sealed, just press, when you put the disc in and pull it back out on the lip, there's little splinters of black of the record that were pressed. She said they were probably pressed incorrectly or something, but just about everyone I got had those little splinters on it. Now it's just dirt and whatever. But that was pretty interesting, how they do that.
Around the edges.
The cutting, I suppose.
The lip,
Cut it.
where you pull it out.
I'm pretty sure Tom has something on his site about the record cleaning system, but I
Does
can't
he?
find it right now. I'll look some more later. But we'll keep going here. Maybe. Will it let me?
technical difficulties or-
Yeah, I can't make any guarantees, but
Alright, so the stylus, the first stylus that RCA made, they actually used sapphire instead of diamonds, because they were still kind of experimenting at that point. 1976, they were able to decrease the grooves from 4.6 microns to 2.7 microns, creating a playing time of 1 hour per side. But in doing so, they discovered they needed a finer stylus tip, and they found diamonds to be the perfect replacement. The stylus is a titanium electrode affixed to the trailing edge of the diamond tip. It follows the V-shaped groove, spinning at 450 RPMs stylus is covering about 500 centimeters a second. So the stylus loses contact for even 0.3 millimeters, an entire line of video information is lost. That's where you get a skip. If the stylus is kicked over by 2.6 microns or one groove, then 133 milliseconds of audio and video information is lost or repeated. So that would be a skip. So to put that into perspective, the average human eye takes 35 milliseconds to blink. So about 4 blinks per groove for disc rotation. Does that make sense? So if you blink 4 times, then that's 1 rotation of the disc or something like that, right? The stylus diagram. So the stylus has a carriage, and then there'll be a rubber coupler affixed to this tube, and then a plastic holder, and then there'll be this spring, which is actually the fly lead.
Does
and then-
anybody know how to adjust that fly lead so the tension is correct? I mean, John did it for
It's
me
John,
on
I
a bunch
guess.
of them, but
I don't know.
Is
Maybe
it-
maybe
is Ben
Ryan's
fly
messed
lead
with
I
it.
think Ryan knows how to do it.
Ryan might know how to do it. I mean, we could try and see what happens.
so you get that brass rivet on the one end of it there, but that's not an adjustment, it just attaches the fly lead to it.
We'll see this tip holder here, and then the stylus tip goes in it, so I think you can adjust that stylus tip in the holder up and down a little bit, or something like that. So I don't know how.
I heard that the fly leads were a part that was maybe common to some watches or something like
The
that.
spring
Yeah,
for
John said that he got 'em.
fly
Got all the
I
replacement
talked to a
parts from watches.
watchmaker guy, and I showed him what a fly lead looks like, and he said that he's been a watchmaker for like 50 years, 60 years, and he said he had never seen anything like that.
Huh. Yeah, that's what John had told me, that he gets them from like a watch company or something. Maybe it's like some special RCA company in Germany or something. Don't know. Exploded diagram. So like, see where it says stereo balancer 154-100 down here? So basically, the 149 stylus would have been the mono, and then if it has that stereo balancer on there, that's the only difference for the stereo stylus. It basically just prevents the sound from vibrating, basically. Do I need to explain this at all? Alright, so these are the different types of styluses. You have the white caddy, or the white stylus is a real diamond. The blue stylus will be an artificial diamond. And then the green stylus was made for the Valley NFL game. It's more of a robust stylus. John wasn't able to repair those for some reason. I don't know how they're different than the other ones. But the smaller one here would be a JK stylus. And then you got your FG stylus, and then the Hitachi stylus. The titanium electrodes approximately 2,500 angstroms thick, which is 2.5 microns. Human hair is approximately 1 million angstroms, meaning you could fit about 400 titanium electrodes in the width of a hair. So they're very thin. They're RF sputtered onto the diamond. I don't know what that means exactly. I haven't researched it much, but I did find a company that does it. So I don't know if we were looking into rebuilding styluses, if they could do that or not. But it's basically just coated onto the side of the diamond, and you know how small the diamond is. But a titanium electrode will last 30 to 70 hours before it begins to kind of form up a little bit, where you start to notice a small signal output at that time, small decrease in signal output at that time. And then the titanium electrode will only wear as fast as the diamond tip, basically, after that. So, however fast the diamond wears down. 65 to 70 milligrams of tracking force. The stylus lasts about 200 hours with no loss of signal, or at least 50 plays before it starts to even starts to degrade. This was just a note that was in one of the service manuals. The mono FG players use the 149 stylus. The stereo uses the 154-100. In production, the 154-100 was used in the same mono players coded 2155 or later. You have to use a 154-100 in a mono player. Make sure you use it in the stylus arm 154036 with wide stylus sensors. So basically, like somewhere down the line in production, they started using a wider stylus arm so that you could use a stereo stylus in a mono player. So if it has a lower serial number than 154036, then you have to use a mono stylus in that mono player. But otherwise, you can usually use a stereo in a mono player. Are you confused yet? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So these are some pictures that John sent me with his microscope of when he was cleaning styluses. This would be what a dirty stylus looks like for the FG, and then a dirty stylus for the JK. You can see there's all that buildup on there. I mean, you can clearly see the difference on the JK one there. It looks way better, but look at how much gunk is built up on there. So that's usually why a stylus won't play, is because it's just dirty. But, and we'll show you how to clean those later here. So yeah, how the disc is read by the player. Magic. This gets more complicated the longer you look at it.
It's like 2 optical illusions in one. Actually 3.
Alright, so how they're really read. It's a very complicated process. Yeah, the people that designed it were like MIT doctorates and really smart dudes, rocket scientists, as you were saying earlier. There's a red book that I have that I'll put on display back there too that has all the mathematical equations and stuff, and it's super complicated. But anyways, the disc is composed of conductive carbon etched with a groove that contains pits and valleys. The disc is sped at 450 RPMs. The stylus, consisting of a diamond with a titanium electrode, trails in the groove. Then they pass a 950 megahertz signal through the disc, through the electrode, up the stylus into an oscillator. The frequency is then adjusted by frequency control and compared to the starting frequency of 950 megahertz. It's capital M, right? The difference is then sent to a pre-amplifier and processed by the onboard circuit chips into the picture that appears on your screen. Does that make sense?
Magic.
Magic. It works. They figured it out. Alright, so this is the cutaway of a stylus arm. So basically this will be the arm, and then you've got the dashed line is the stylus in there. And then the disc, and the stylus sits down on the disc. You have a velocity corrector. There's going to be a fly lead resonator, preamplifier. All that circuitry is in the actual stylus arm, so it tracks with the stylus. Probably just because that was the easiest place to put it, I suppose. Oh, I made it angry. Hold on a minute here. Now it's going to jump ahead like 3 slides, probably. See, it's probably downloading upgrades in the background now since I connected to the internet. Okay. So the history of the players. Many players and discs were made in the development process. The largest quantity of players manufactured was the SDT 200W, which we were recently talking about. It represents the 6th player design, and they made about 430 complete players of this model for internal use. And basically it's the same as our SFT 100, except the stylus arm tracks side to side instead of up and down. So, but other than that, it's basically the same. It doesn't have the light switch, it has buttons instead. But we've never seen one of those in person. I don't know if anybody has one. That's basically what I just said. Left to right instead of front to back. That's the exploded diagram. And you can download this. I think I posted a link earlier. You can download this PDF if you want a closer view of what all there is there. I don't think anybody's going to be working on an SDT 200. And these are the different models. Do we want to go over some of the different models? The Elmo and the Toshibas are that first one up there. They kind of look like that.
I have an Elmo here today.
Yeah, I saw that back there. It's very cool. I don't think I've seen an Elmo in
I
person.
brought it last year as well.
Oh.
Just a Toshiba model, but a
Toshiba
really
phone.
different color.
And then all these Hitachi ones are basically the same. They use the Hitachi stylus. The only difference is going to be, you know, stereo and mono and whatever display. And then you got your FG models. Yeah, so like the 75 doesn't have a display at all. The 100 has a display. And then the 101's a demonstration model. 200 added stereo. The 250 added a remote. And then for the SJT models, the first one only has fast forward on it, I believe. The second one has fast forward and rewind. The 101's the demonstration model. The 200 they added stereo. The 300 they added a remote, and then the SJT 400 they added interactive capabilities, so they have banded discs. You can put a disc in and you can like skip tracks like CD.
Do you know if there was any use for the 400X?
I think the 400X was one they were working on for like connecting to a computer.
Okay.
So like with that Hoyle Last Resort disc and stuff like that.
Because weren't they working on something stuff for Commodore right before player production was shut down?
Yeah, because I found a 400X one time.
Did you sell
And
the
it had the green stylus in it.
Right.
Was that maybe for the cabinet?
Yeah, I think
game?
Ryan bought it.
I think that was for the game.
They used a regular SJT 400 in the Valley games, but they were probably working on the 400X to connect to a computer.
Yeah, my SKT 400 came with me in part 2. That's where I got mine.
It's like this SKT 265 down here. It came with like a circuit board and stuff. That might have been one they were working for the computer as well.
Did they make movies record proof? Like if you would try and rent a copy of a VHS tape and record it at home, it would fade in and out?
Oh, not that I'm aware of.
Is that
Yes.
Macrovision?
What?
Is that Macrovision, like copyright protection?
I think
or is
so,
that
yeah.
something else?
Copyright. Because I got a bunch of discs where somebody wrote recorded.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I don't think they had anything like that. So I mean, you can copy a disc as many times as you wanted.
Yeah, that's great.
And then the SKTs basically just have a little different circuitry than the SJTs, but they're, for the most part, they're the same player. Realistic would have been Radio Shack's player. It's basically the same as the Hitachi models. Same thing with the Sears, except for that first Sears. It's like the SFT 100, that 150 model.
This one is like all wood grain,
Yeah,
100% grain.
they liked the wood grain back then. It was
So
nice.
That's a mono model there.
The one in the middle is also very wood grain. Which one is yours, Jim?
What's the question?
Which one of them is yours? Didn't you think?
Well, the one you pointed out is a mono model, which
Yeah.
is wood grain, and the one to the right of it, the 250 is also wood grain.
Yeah.
That's a stereo model.
Didn't
The
you bring one of
pictures-
these though? Or you brought the one up from the last page? Or?
I have a 250 here today.
Right.
Yeah, what I like about that is it also has the digital display in addition to the analog display, whereas the other stereo models only have the analog display. Not very accurate or precise.
These are a couple of the more rare ones, J.C. Penney's player, and then we found a couple Zenith BP 4000s, which was Zenith stereo player.
Where'd you find your J.C. Penney player? I'm curious about that, because it's the only one I've ever seen.
I think I got it on eBay actually.
Wow.
Does it say J.C. Penney?
Yeah, and the remote.
Who was the manufacturer of that? Because they didn't,
I would imagine
was it
RCA made
RCA
it.
just made them?
300.
Is it the same thing with Sears? They would also make the,
Are these lights
Sears
or
or stock?
stickers?
Well,
Additional
except
lights?
for the first
Except
one.
for the first
It's
one.
just
Yeah.
like paint.
Okay.
It's
That
just like
one,
colored
because they
paint
didn't
put on
think
there
they'd be
to
able to
make
get
it
them
look
to
different,
market
a little bit
time, so they
different.
have RCA, knock them off for them.
And then
There aren't
this is
many of them
the
around.
SKT 425 that would have came out with the RCA Dementia system. But once CED got canceled, RCA canceled the SKT 425 to go with it. But apparently there's one that exists. It got thrown in the dumpster out back and somebody grabbed it. And Tom has it. So that's the only one of those. So yeah, you'd think the drawer turntable is hard to find. Try an SKT 425. Alright, so here's kind of a design overview of the operation. Turntable, the spindle, this is going to be your board sitting on top. This is of a SFT 100 player. And then you got your side 1, side 2 indicator, your fast forward and rewind buttons, your function level for on-off display. Your power transformers in the front over here. There's a clutch link that goes back to the reduction gear, the mechanisms. DC servo motor. Your pickup arm is up on top and then it slides forward. This would be the JK models. Or no. No, this is
That's without the turntable.
yeah, this is parts number 2. So yeah, they removed the turntable and the circuit board and stuff so you can kind of see underneath. You got your turntable motor pulley right down here, which your belt would go on. They had a stylus sweeper that would clean your stylus when it returned to the home position. Caddy lock defeat tabs in the back there, so when you put the disc in, it latches onto those little defeat tabs and pulls the spine out. That's mostly it. Here's the parts number 3 overview. So you got your turntable motor down there. Antenna switch push rod, turntable. So on some of them, so when you say like the cams are out of alignment, there's the switch that turns it on and off, and then it's connected to this bar that goes across, and you can see these little cams, and the cams are like a little like half washer, and they're locked into place on the bar. And so then when you rotate the switch, those cams will rotate and activate these levers, or these switches. And so sometimes if people don't know what they're doing, they'll shove a disc in and just like smash it to play, like trying to think that that's how it works. And it'll throw all those cams out of alignment, and then the player won't work at all. You have to readjust all those cams. That's what's going
It's bare to do.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's the hardest thing to
it's
do.
not fun at all.
You have to do it and take it apart. and
Yeah, you have to take the
apart,
platter off,
take it apart.
take it all apart, yeah.
And if you tighten them too tight, they all snap.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they can have.
They'll snap down the middle because they're old.
Yep.
Draw players usually have the same typical failure. I mean, is there usually a typical failure that they all typically have?
Not particularly. Like certain models, some things will go wrong. Like that SGT 250 is kind of notorious for the stereo board going out, and I mean stuff like that, I guess. But, this kind of shows where that spine release tab is, and then the sweeper arm, a little arm in the back that goes back and forth. So the other picture here with the north-south on it, that would be the magnet on the bottom of the platter. And so then there's these two poles that come up right there. And the pole, it says drive poles are reversed at the AC line rate of 60 hertz. So when you plug your player in, it's a 120 volt, 60 hertz system. So then it drives between those two poles. So then once this motor gets your turntable up to speed, those two little that magnet will just alternate between that north-south pole and it'll keep the disc spinning. So if you try to plug it into a 50 hertz system, it won't work, because it'll spin at the wrong speed. And then if you move those two poles closer and further apart, then you can adjust how fast it spins. So if you get like a black and white picture, that means it's spinning too slow. So you got to kind of adjust those little north and south poles a little bit. It's a tab. But we can show that when we open one up. Alright, here is a stylus arm. Basically they have some circuitry on top, and then they have all those resonators and the transducer. There's a cartridge that goes in there. And it slides up and down on that rod.
Yeah, I did like
This is the load sequence. It's kind of long, I won't read all of this, but it basically just goes over like from when you put a disc in to when you switch the lever and all the different things that engage and disengage to start the disc. So like I said, you can download this and read through all that if you want. We won't waste our time doing that.
It's easier to just open one up and look
Yeah,
at it.
it's easier just to show you when we open it.
You know, it starts to make sense when you actually look inside, and get your hands on it.
And then this is a flow chart that John would always, send with us. Basically, kind of just runs you through like from where the stylus arm is to the video converter and video demodulator. So if you have an issue, you can kind of follow it to where, and when you look at the circuit board too, it'll actually have this kind of drawn out on the circuit board so you can see where everything is. And that's the JK 200-300 one. Basically, it just kind of adds like remote control and stuff like that, stereo sound up here. And this would be the JK 400 one. It adds the interactive capabilities, and then it's got a little bit different infrared control for the remote and stuff on the front. Oh, and then it also had that added, so you can hook it up to the dementia system and stuff, that control port. Alright, so then we get into the repair toolkit. We can go over this a little bit more too once we get set up, but this is kind of a list of everything you're probably going to need.
Do you have that in a list to hand out?
Yep, you can download this whole thing off the website. I'll post a link again. I think there's a link on there already, but I'll post another one.
Now, wasn't someone selling some bottles of the Omni Lube?
Oh yeah, I do have the Omni Lube available if you want to buy one. I think they're like $10. You can put a custom 2022 Workshop label on here. But yeah, you can read through this at your leisure and kind of get all the stuff that you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need screwdrivers. This like 1/4" hex head screwdrivers for like the nut on the bottom for turntable height adjustment and stuff. An electric drill with removable tips. Some paintbrushes for cleaning. digital multimeter, so you can test the different chips and stuff on there. You want some silicone grease. They actually made phono lube is what they recommended, but I don't think they make that anymore, so you can just kind of use like a white lithium grease. And then you have the Omni Lube here. If you don't have Omni Lube, you can use like sewing machine oil. It just doesn't last as long. Ryan would always use like a syringe. He'd get like a little like syringe to use for the machine oil for like lubricating it and stuff. You're going to want to get some like isopropyl alcohol for cleaning the JK belts and stuff off, because they kind of turn to goo over time. Some chemical resistant gloves for when you're cleaning the belts off, because otherwise it just gets everywhere. Flashlight, a container to hold the screws and stuff. I just use like the cups off the top of the Pepto bottles and stuff. Pocket ruler. I believe he uses that to measure the height, turntable height. Magnet spacer gauge. I can show you what that is. I have one, but that's for the FG models, so that you can adjust those poles without actually having to take the platter off every time. There's kind of a picture of it. So you got your Omni Lube, you got your lithium grease, some isopropyl alcohol, some brushes, your slide ruler, multimeter, some screwdrivers. And then this is just kind of RCA parts. You got extra styluses, service manuals, belts, reduction gears. And then there's some links here for some basic mechanical service guides. This is mostly paperwork that John had, so I scanned it in, and you can download them here off my Google Drive. And then there's some links. There's a link to the CED Magic, the caddy and label variations list. Basically, whenever there's like a caddy or a label variation, I try to post it on the forum. That's the link to the forum. The Laserdisc database actually has a CED chapter where you can go and you can download manuals for the players. I think there's a 400 on there, and then I think there's the like 200 through 300 on there. And then this Dragon's Lair project is just kind of a link to somebody that was working on one of the Valley NFL games. Just kind of shows like the manual and some interesting stuff. You can check it out. And then here's some video links. This is how to remove and inspect a CED disc, how to ship a disc. And then this is Tony's video on sync plate adjustments, on cam adjustments, belt replacements, and the JK belt replacement. This is just some common questions and answers that I had thrown on here. These are kind of like what new people say, like, oh, I found this at a thrift store. What is it? What is CED? Chris, you want to explain it? It's not that.
Yeah, it's not.
How to open and inspect a disc. I got the YouTube video on there. The best place to buy discs. Well, here is definitely a good place to get discs. Otherwise, like eBay's got discs usually. I usually just go on I used to use Craigslist a lot, but I don't really go on there anymore. Facebook Marketplace usually has discs. And I usually always search for Laserdisc too, because sometimes people will think CEDs are Laserdiscs, and they'll just throw it up there and say Laserdiscs for sale. So you got to kind of search for all that stuff. Like you can search Selectivision, you can search Video Disc. Sometimes you can spell Video Disc differently with like a K at the end, and a different link will pop up.
Space.
Yeah, spaces in there, stuff like that. Sometimes they'll use a Z in there instead of an S. It's like, all right. Disc. How how to hook up to a modern TV. Most TVs have RF, have coax input, but a lot of times, like if the picture isn't crystal clear, it won't show it. It'll just be a blue screen. So if your player's not working right, you're not going to get a picture, and then you won't even be able to see what's going on if it's just like a black and white picture or what. So you kind of have to get a tube TV for testing and stuff. That way you can see what's going on. Where can I order new belts and styluses? We can't really order new styluses anymore, but belts, if you go to Tom's website, on the products page, it'll list a belt replacement guide, and then it also lists, I think, Russell Industries, a link to Russell Industries. You can go there and order belts. Any more questions?
You're thorough.
Is that good? All right, there's the VP 4000. That's the inside of it.
I guess one last question, all of that pictures of, is that similar, because I haven't seen the inside of the Toshiba stereo, is that similar to one of the Toshiba stereo ones?
Same. Tony, it's the same, isn't it? What? The, in the stereo, same as the Toshiba, right?
The VP550, whichever one that is. the
Okay,
Toshiba,
yeah, internally it's the same though, right?
Basically, the drive is the same, but a lot of the other, the different limit switches and stuff are in place.
Just the clock. And don't have any measurements. I don't know who grabbed the bag last time. But,
Oh, that'd be cool.
but if you want to make a clock, there's instructions on here how to do it. You can buy the mechanisms off Amazon or whatever.
Right? So so when you inspect the disc, right, what, if there's any scratches whatsoever or smudges, at what point will you not play it to the stylus? And obviously if it's cracked, right, that's, but, you know, to what degree would you not play a disc or take a chance with it?
Depends on how much you want to risk it, I guess. I mean, if you only want to play like a flawless disc, then you can do that. But otherwise, like if it's just got like one scratch or something on it, depending on how big the scratch is.